Hey guys, well, we're back here on the C4 Corvette lowering the front, and I wanted to show you guys some stuff on the springs here. So, on the front spring, you have original on the ends are these pads. Okay, and they go like that from the factory. This rubber rides in the end of the control arm. So, one of these peeled off. The other one, however, came off in pieces. I used a Sawzall, and I did not cut into the spring ends at all, but I got it off. So, that's off. I know that there's not a lot of information out there, so anyway, you want to get those pads off, and I will be showing you guys how to make new pads out of a cutting mat. This is phenolic plastic. This will protect the spring from wearing through on the control arm. And the next thing is the wedges. So, these blocks with this inside of it, and see how it goes. Okay, that's bonded on the spring right there. Then this phenolic piece, I'll kind of show you guys here how it works. It's designed to pivot. That's inside of this. And then when the spring is in the car, the shim plate goes over. Oh, wait, forgot a part. This piece goes over the top of all this, just like this. And then the shim plate goes on. And then you have your U-bracket. The bracket that holds it on goes here. So, you don't need the shim. You don't need this. And you remove this and cut this off. Now, this is an 85, so they're put together this way. I believe that 88 and up, this is all one solid piece of rubber. So, we just cut this off with literally a hot knife. Just took an old butcher knife and heated it up till it was red hot with a torch, and it slices right through rubber. Sometimes you have to heat it up a couple of times. So then I took let me see it, a flap wheel on my 4.5-inch grinder, and I cleaned up the area. Now, I didn't get into the fiberglass, I just buffed the finish. And I then took some of this and bonded the wedges on. Now, I measured and centered the wedge to the center of this rubber and bonded it on there fairly evenly. So, that's really all there is to it. The next thing I have to do is modify the brackets. Now, you can buy 88 to 96 aluminum brackets, and they're easier to cut down. I am just going to cut down and modify the original sheet steel brackets. So I will show you guys how to do that too, and then we'll get this thing put back together. Alright guys, I'll see you in a while. So I ended up taking the cutting board mats, and it turns out there's two here, and I didn't know that till after I cut it out. But I just laid my end piece on and matched up the corners and sides, and cut a square out. I then put it back on here, and you can see I made a mark. I went ahead and cleaned all this up, got all the rubber off and everything, and this was my squares that I laid on here. this, and I just traced, and then using my square, I took my pie cuts out because I'm going to bond this to the spring and then use the heat gun and roll these over the edge so that this part will protect the side of the spring in the pocket. And then I'll trim it off. And I didn't know it at first, and I figured out that there's a rough side and a smooth side. You can see it's shiny there, not shiny. The not shiny is rough. So I'm going to put, sorry guys, I'm going to put the rough side towards the spring so that my right stuff that I'm going to use for an adhesive will work better. So I'm going to go ahead and get this set up to glue these on and show you guys how to do that. Okay, so I took some brake clean and cleaned all this off all the way around, and this is the spring. I just got it sitting in my vise. I made sure this is the side where that sits into the lower control arm. So I'm just going to take my adhesive and put some on here. Now I've read you can use weather strip adhesive, or you could probably use some kind of glue. I'm just going to use this because I already used it to glue some stuff on here. I'm just going to, I've already got my mark on here, so I'm just going to spread my glue out, my sealant. In this case it's glue. Nice even layer. And I'm not going to worry about the sides quite yet, because when I heat it with the heat gun I can come back later. So again, my rough side, I'll just lay it right on there. And you can push it down. You can actually see it. See if you guys can see it too here. You can see the air under it. So I'm just pushing out all the air. Make sure I got a good even bond. It's kind of tough to see, but you get the idea. Put this back down here. Go ahead and push all this air out. Paper towel here. And reposition it just a little bit. So I'll let that dry on there, and go ahead and turn the spring around now. And I just want to clean this up so that the adhesive gets a good bond. I got a rag and some brake clean. Knife. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to take my knife and just kind of scrape any rubber off that's left on there from removing the pad. And I just use my file just to kind of smooth out any real rough spots. And somebody's going to probably throw a fit that I'm cutting into the spring. I'm cutting it only into the gel coat. And I'm just smoothing out some bumps. I'm not cutting into the layers or the fibers of the fiberglass itself, which you're going to want to be careful with splinters. Just dress it up. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you don't have a file, use sandpaper. Really anything. And we'll take our brake clean here. Wipe everything down real good. I just want it to be good and clean, grease free, so that it adheres. And we'll take our one block and our marker, slide it all the way on, just draw a line right at the end of it. And that way I know when I put this plastic on where it goes. Okay. Again with the sealant. Doesn't take a lot. I'm going to go just a little bit past the line. Okay, nice and even. And again, same thing, press it on. Try to work out the air bubbles. With the rough side going towards the adhesive. Shiny side up. Okay. So now I'll get a heat gun set up and we'll heat these edges and get everything trimmed up. Okay, so back with the heat gun. Figure this thing out here. My electricity isn't working for some reason. There we go. And just heating it up. And we'll pull it over. High heat setting. got to get my other heat gun. This one's too slow. Okay, let's try this one. Which is high, which is low here. Oh, that one's already getting hotter. You can see it just moving right down. Stay there, you know. Whoa. So, do it just right. It will totally bend over. It really starts to melt that plastic. It almost melts it totally off. Get some of the heat out of it here. So now, set that down and take, I got a piece of aluminum laying here. I can just clamp it on here with a C-clamp. We'll just leave that set like that. I'll do the other side, and then I'll heat up the other side and melt and bend it over and show you guys how to trim that off. This is still an experiment, so I haven't figured out the easiest way to do this. So I'm still using the same adhesive. The heat way didn't work out quite as good as I wanted. So this side, I'm doing a little bit different. So, I'm just using some electrical tape. So I got enough left here. Nope. Don't. Alright, well, gotta get another roll. Okay, so I put sealant around the edges I'll just take my electrical tape and pull it down, pull the sides down over. Same way all the way around. Just get the tape to hold the plastic in place. Shit. And the whole thing moved. That didn't work. And that whole thing ripped. So I got another one already drawn out here. So I'll just trace it out real quick. Bear with me, guys. Okay. Well, drew out another one. I'll just cut it out with scissors. Try to get it as straight as possible. Okay, knocking stuff over. Okay, so one, two, last couple cuts here. Okay, so I got a new one cut out. I'm just taking rub out the air bubbles. And I'll leave that sit and dry. So I figured out, for me, how much I needed to cut out, which is this piece. I cut it out of both sides and then joined it back together and welded it. I'm using the original shim plate to hold everything square in place. To give you an idea, you can buy the 88 to 96 aluminum brackets, and it's far easier and less work to do than this. I just welded this. It's still hot. I haven't ground anything down yet. But that's basically it as far as these brackets go. They're not super complicated. You just have to figure out, measure the distance, because the bracket slides over this to the tip of the wedge, but you have to consider that this is rubber, and when you clamp it down it's going to crush a little bit, and so that's what I did. If you have the equipment to do this at home, welding and whatnot, you can weld your own, or you can just buy the other ones. I leave that up to you. So I also wanted to point out that on this plastic that I put on here, I ended up just cutting the sides off, because I don't think it's going to hit anywhere on the sides on the control arm. So I'll put a little bit of grease on here before I put the spring back in. You can see it on there, shiny. That's just a rubbing protector. So next step is to clean up these welds. I've already got the other one of these clamps done, and then I'll begin reassembly. Alright guys, so getting ready to put the front end back together. I got my plastics are all glued on. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on each plastic. And I just use a little brush. On each end. And I've already applied grease on the control arm right here where the spring sits. There's already grease there, so that way when the control arm moves, this will slide back and forth nice. Okay, so then you just take your spring, your arch of your spring goes down, so you just slide it back in. And the next part of the deal is I'm going to move underneath, because I need to put these brackets on that hold the spring up in there. So I'm going to move to the underneath now. Alright guys, so now I'm just getting the brackets on these pads. We'll slide the spring through. And then you just slide it up on the bolts. There's one. And of course it's just a matter of playing with it and getting it right. There's one. Okay. Got a nut. Not a lot of room, so I recommend taking a socket and an extension. You can just slide the extension right on up in there. And start your nut on. So I'll get these set up on here and we'll come back to you guys.